Okay, let's dive into this. If you've ever just stared at a piano keyboard or maybe looked at a piece of sheet music, you've probably felt totally overwhelmed by all those notes, the sharps, the flats, the whole shebang. For a lot of us, it kind of feels like this daunting, impenetrable wall of music theory. But today, in this explainer, we're going to transform that intimidating wall into a beautifully logical staircase that literally anyone can climb. Right off the bat, we're going to solve a really fascinating puzzle. The big question we're looking at is simple, but honestly, it's pretty profound. Why exactly 12 major scales? I mean, why does all of Western music rely on this seemingly arbitrary number? Well, I promise you, it's not just some random choice made by someone centuries ago. It's a perfectly designed, interlocking mathematical system, and we are going to break it down together. So let's start with section 1, the magic number 12, finding our baseline. We really need to take a building blocks approach here. To truly get why all 12 scales exist, we've got to start at absolute zero. And our foundation for that? C major. C major is by far the easiest scale to grasp because if you picture a piano keyboard in your head, playing C major involved exactly 0 black keys. It's just the white keys played straight up in a row. No sharps, no flats. It is our pure, unadulterated starting line. Which brings us to section 2, the circle of fifths. I personally like to call this the musician's ultimate cheat code. Now that we have our baseline of C major, we need to figure out the actual mechanism that produces all the other scales. Because, musicians don't just pull new scales out of thin air. Instead, they follow this one core concept. Each new major scale starts exactly 5 notes above the previous one. I really want you to lock in on that critical phrase, 5 notes above. Try not to think of this as some dry, dusty theory. Think of it as the ultimate musical shortcut. It's basically a map. So how does that map work in practice? Well, I call it the rule of 1. First, you start 5 notes above the last scale you learned. Second, when you do that, you end up adding just 1 new black key. This is a total game changer because it means you can learn music gradually. We're only ever adding just 1 new sharp at a time, which keeps things completely manageable. You never have to sit there and memorize some whole new set of complicated rules for every single scale. Now, what's really interesting is how beautifully this mathematically fills up. We start with our baseline, C major, at 0. Go 5 notes up, and we hit G major, which gives us exactly 1 sharp, F sharp. Count 5 more notes up, and we hit D major, keeping the F sharp but adding a C sharp. Up another 5 notes to A major, and boom, we get 3 sharps. It absolutely proves that one step at a time narrative right down the line. Let's keep moving and see how this builds if we follow that exact same rule. Up 5 notes from A is E major, bringing us to 4 sharps. Then B major hits 5, F sharp major brings us to 6, and finally, C sharp major maxes us out at 7 sharps. It's just this relentless mathematical climb that builds 8 distinct scales using one single rule. Pretty cool, right? But here is where we hit a bit of a wall. Section 3, the pivot to flats. Or, as I subtitled it, when things get messy. Because as mathematically satisfying as that climb was, we run headfirst into a very practical problem. If we kept going past 7, we'd literally have to invent double sharps and triple sharps. 7 sharps? Way too messy. Stacking that much ink on sheet music is an absolute nightmare for the human eye, to the point of sheer terror for anyone trying to sight read it. So, the system elegantly switches to flats for simplicity. It's kind of like reaching the peak of a mountain, turning around, and just walking down the other side. Doing this creates a beautiful new symmetrical pattern. Let's walk through how this works. F major starts us off with just 1 flat, which is B flat. Then B flat major has 2 flats. E flat major has 3. A flat major has 4. Do you see it? It's the exact same steady, step-by-step growth we just saw with the sharps. We're just utilizing flats now to keep the written notation clean and readable. Continuing that smooth progression, we hit D flat major with 5 lots, G flat major with 6, and we finish the progression all the way up to C flat major, which accounts for 7 flats. And just like that, the whole journey is complete. We climbed up the sharps, mapped out the flats, and unlocked all 12 scales. Which brings us to our final act, Section 4, one universal pattern, breaking the illusion. We still need to resolve the final mystery, right? Like, how do these two separate progressions of sharps and flats actually overlap? Well, let's compare them. On one hand, we have F sharp major with 6 sharps. On the other hand, we have G flat major with 6 flats. Because of this really neat concept called enharmonics, which simply means having two different names for the exact same pitch, these scales that look entirely different on paper actually sound exactly the same on an instrument. No way, right? But it's true. Your ear literally cannot tell the difference. They're just written differently depending on the specific musical context of the song. So let's break down the ultimate synthesis of everything we've covered in this explainer. The absolute biggest thing I want you to remember is that you aren't memorizing 12 random disconnected scales. The key idea here is wonderfully simple. Every single new major scale starts with the exact same universal pattern of intervals. Secondly, the only thing that actually changes is your starting note. And third, you just add sharps or flats, one accidental at a time, to maintain that exact pattern. It's really just one simple mathematical rule that naturally produces 12 brilliant interconnected outcomes.
I want to leave you with this thought. If all Western music is built on this one mathematical pattern, how does it shape the songs you listen to every day? Seriously, the next time you put on your favorite playlist, whether you're into pop, jazz, classical, whatever, I challenge you to think about the underlying math. Think about those intervals, the step-by-step additions of sharps and flats happening right beneath the surface of the melody. It's all perfectly connected. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.